In the previous unit, we discussed about what is marketing, its definition, the different stages of evolution, marketing mix, functions of marketing, and various aspects of marketing environment. In this unit, our discussion is going to be focused on marketing research, diverting itself to analyzing buyer behavior, buyer motives, factors influencing buyer behavior, market segmentation, criteria for market segmentation, and what are the different bases for segmentation. Why do we need market information? The purpose of providing market information is to facilitate managers to take proper decisions based on the prevailing market conditions and also anticipating probable changes. Now, information is needed on different perspectives. Number one, the complexity of marketing. Number two, significance of economic indicators. Number three, development of science and technology, competition, marketing planning, information explosion, consumerism, customer needs, and demands. Because of these various aspects, it is very much essential that the organizations need to be provided with relevant information that would suit their market compatibility. In this context, market information can be identified in two different angles. One is the information system. An information system is an organized way of receiving, recording, analyzing, and sending messages. On the other hand, a system is something which means doing things in an order, proper arrangement, and with a purpose, wherein every system has a definite purpose. On the other hand, information serves as a guideline which has the potential to influence managerial decisions. Coming to the definition of what is MIS, that is Market Information System. It is an organized ongoing system for providing information to decision makers in the marketing field. Also, it can be viewed in the perspective of it being a set of procedures and methods for the regular and planned analysis and presentation of information which are useful to take marketing decisions. These are the words that are given by R. Hawks and R. Good. Now, what are the essential requisites of a good MIS? A good MIS basically focuses on providing fast and relevant information. It needs to be very economical. It should be user friendly or user oriented. And it should also focus on the fact that it secures the involvement of the users, because the more the involvement, the better is the output from a good system of MIS. It definitely requires a good marketing support system, and also it should be capable of absorbing the changes in the system that are likely to occur. In a broader perspective, MIS should also be facilitated in such a way that it adopts the principles of selectivity in information, that is, choosing what alone shall be relevant to the context to which such information may be referred to. It will also involve and motivate the users of this information, because basically when you have sufficient information in hand, it enables the process of decision making to be very, very effective. Now let us focus on the need of marketing information system. The need for marketing information system focuses on certain aspects, wherein to specify the first one, marketing information system is done in anticipation of consumer demand, which implies that the organization expects a change in the consumer's behavioral pattern and also relates itself to demand creation. So, expecting a variation in the demand conditions, market information system should provide the relevant supportive information. Secondly, it is pertaining to the complexity of marketing. Basically, the modern marketing process is more complex and elaborate. The markets keep expanding, and the involvement of the multinational marketing activities necessitates that you need to have sufficient market intelligence services. Hence, a proper and a systematic approach to such information system provision shall have to be made, and this elaborates on the focus on marketing communication. Now, marketing communication provides information which focuses on non-price competition through good advertising and sales promotion. Coming to the third aspect, this pertains to the significance of economic indicators. When you speak of economic indicators, it focuses on the demand and supply conditions which keep constantly changing. Now, these determine the prices and the overall market conditions. When there are fluctuations of demand, supply, and prices, this facilitates that the organization needs to update itself with such changing marketing conditions. This facilitates the provision of good market reports, which will focus on these aspects, the so called economic indicators, namely demand, supply, and prices. The next one is about the significance of competition. There is no organization or there is no market which is devoid of such competition. When it comes to competition, it is necessary that it is on the context of meeting rivals and opponents and trying to formulate strategies which provide advantage over one another. The behavioral pattern of one's competitors and guessing the competitors' need for services requires a good marketing intelligence system. This can be obtained only if the market information system is up to date pertaining to the changing environment, changing market conditions, and the ever changing consumer demand. Coming to the development of science and technology in this perspective, science has improved a lot when compared to the yesteryears, and obviously enough, modern marketer must be innovative. And innovation requires good research and development, which would facilitate provision of adequate information, which will actually upgrade the new product development, the new market conditions, the expectations of the consumer, new processes, and new techniques, which obviously are based on the facts and figures that are provided through marketing research. Consumerism, which relates itself to a ever widening market, is because there is a lot of gap between the unrealistic marketing plans and programs. Many marketers find it so isolated when they compare their activities to marketing realities. This has obviously led to customer dissatisfaction. Now, consumerism and increasing consumer grievances indicate that products which do not match the consumer's needs and desires definitely do not have a place in the market. Many marketers have also understood that the marketing agencies who are in charge of distribution do not provide the apt services that are required by the customers. As such, an up-to-date marketing information system alone can establish proper two-way flow of information and understanding as between the producers and consumers. Now, marketing planning is something that is very, very essential in this particular perspective because as of now, we live in the age of complete planning and programming. And our plans and programs are something that is based on the information that has been already provided through sufficient research being conducted or even so through economic forecasts. Now, in this condition, a marketing information system alone can interrelate and coordinate the product and consumer demand so that both supply and demand travel in the same wavelength. So, a good system of information is the good background for a proper marketing planning. More so, there is something called as information explosion. Now, information explosion is where we are flooded with a lot of information and we only have to consider those which are relevant, those which shall be apt, and those shall provide a proper base for providing a good system of marketing and as such satisfy the consumer's demands. With the use of computer and electronic data processing equipment, it has led to a lot of accumulation of data and retaining such data, which will obviously facilitate the organizations to help in their decision making process pertaining to markets. So far, we were discussing about the need for a good marketing information system. Now, if you really need to have a good marketing information system, it shall be supported by certain essential characteristics. Now, what do you think are the basic characteristics of a good system of MIS? MIS is something that is a developed master plan for information flow. As such, it is an ongoing process, and more so, it operates continuously. Second thing is that the good integration of functional departments, executives, and specialists will facilitate a good system of MIS. And also, a good data processing equipment, which is backed by good personnel who would work on it, is also an essential aspect of MIS. MIS is future oriented and it anticipates and prevents problems as well as it solves marketing problems. It is both a preventive as well as a curative process in marketing. Now, one of the essential aspects of MIS is that gathered data is processed with the help of management science or some sort of a research technique. Now, it is essential that these research techniques or the so called gathered data is used sufficiently well for the problem solving in the field of marketing. Now, system analysts and designs operate the MIS through computers. Essentially, they must be updated with the relevant information or what is sought for working towards a good system of MIS. Now, management obviously has a steady flow of information on a regular basis based on the right information for the right people at the right time and at the right cost. Now, let's focus on the functions of MIS. The Marketing Information System performs 6 functions. Number 1, assembling of marketing data. Number 2, processing, which involves editing, tabulating, and summarizing the data. Number 3, it relates to analyzing the data. That is, it relates itself to finding out percentages, ratios, and the test of significance and the like. The fourth one is about storage and retrieval, which relates to filing and indexing. The fifth one relates to evaluating regarding accuracy and reliability of data. Now, this is very essential because the data that has been collected has to be used very, very specifically at certain points of time. And in this context, it is much necessary to find out whether the so collected data are accurate and are reliable, which will facilitate a proper system of decision making. And the last one relates to dissemination or distribution of relevant and wanted information to the decision makers, more so to the marketing managers. Now, let's see what the marketing research process is all about. The marketing research process consists of number 1, defining the problem and the research techniques. Number 2, developing the research plan. Number 3, implementing the research plan. And number 4, interpreting and reporting the findings. The first stage being defining the problem and the research techniques. Now, we have to identify what the problem is all about or what type of information do we collect which will enable the conduct of a good marketing research. In this case, the research can be categorized into 3 different types. The first one being exploratory research, which means gathering preliminary information that will help define the problem and suggest a good hypothesis. The second one is the descriptive research, which means the description of things as a consumer's attitudes and demographics or market potential for a particular product. The third is a causal research, which relates to testing hypotheses about the cause and effect relationships. The second stage being the development of research plan. It helps in determining the specific information that is required, and this can be identified by collecting information which can be categorized as primary information and secondary information. Where primary information is collected for specific purposes that are in hand, the secondary information is one that relates to the information that has already been collected or previously collected. This also categorizes itself as historic information. But in both the cases, the information so collected need to be relevant, accurate, current, and impartial. The third stage being the implementation of the research plan. Now, the research problem being identified and the relevant data being collected, we need to see how we can implement the research plan. Now, this again elaborates itself into 3 different stages where the collection of data, processing of data, and analyzing the data constitutes the major elements. Collection of data can again relate itself from primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources are those where a sort of questionnaire is being distributed or surveys being conducted, where information is so collected remains to be a first hand information. The secondary data is one that is collected from various journals or publications that can highlight or substantiate the information that is collected through primary data, or the second information can by itself serve as a source of information to conduct a proper marketing research. Now, the data so collected need to be processed because it requires a lot of filtering and segregation of information so collected. So, what is the data that is required or relevant need to be analyzed and systematically categorized. And the collected data will have to be analyzed that will relate itself to the research problem in question. The information now so collected need to be properly interpreted, reported, and the findings of the same need to be materialized. Now, the data that is collected is interpreted with the related concepts with the research problem so that the data so collected can be linked or correlated with the information in question. And based on the interpretation of the findings, conclusions need to be drawn as to what sort of managerial decisions or marketing decisions are likely to be taken. And the decisions so concluded will have to be reported to the management, which will facilitate them to implement those decisions in the near future. So far, we were discussing about market research. And the need for market research is only to give a proper substantiation to the decision making process. But this basically requires identifying the correct category of customers. Now, this can be highlighted by the concept of market segmentation. Now, what is market segmentation? Market segmentation is dividing a market into distinct groups with distinct needs, characteristics, or behavior which might require separate products or marketing mixes. Now, market segmentation actually has its own advantages, or rather, the need for market segmentation is based on the specific criteria that is subject to discussion now. That is, to locate marketing opportunities, to define the market in terms of customer needs, to formulate and implement a marketing program, to make adjustments in the products and marketing communication, to assess the level of competition, and to utilize the limited resources. Now, market research focuses around various aspects. That is, it is dependent on actionability, adequate potential, effective demand, market responsiveness, accessibility, and measurability. Talking of actionability, a marketer should determine his ability to implement the marketing program. Adequate potential implies that the marketers should develop programs to match the segment groups, and the segment should have a sufficient buying power which determines the effective demand. Now, segments should respond positively to the marketing efforts, and based on this, all segments should be accessible within the reach through means of communication and distribution. And the segment should be based on market characteristics which can serve as a criteria of measuring the market characteristics. Talking of the two different approaches which will facilitate a good system of market segmentation, we have the people-oriented approach and the product-oriented approach. Now, the people-oriented approach is something that is related to or that confines itself to the customer's personal characteristics. Product-oriented approach is one that is based on the customer's response. When you talk of people-oriented approach, it confines itself to mostly the demographic aspects of the customers. Let's say it relates itself to geographic segmentation, where geographic location is a criteria or the basis for such type of market segmentation. Here, the distinction between rural markets and urban markets is considered because that is something that is considered to be important as far as India is concerned. Now, the urban population has a different set of characteristics where they are based on better education, higher incomes, and greater mobility, whereas the rural population, on the other hand, has less education, lower income, and lesser mobility. More so, the urban people are innovative. Thus, geographic segmentation calls for dividing the market into different geographic units based on territories, nations, states, and the like. The second aspect in this approach is demographic segmentation, which is a study of population and the demographic characteristics like gender, age, marital status, and children, the place of residence, mobility, etc., are those aspects which will be considered. Coming to gender, the two different genders of the male and the female buyer behavior are different in its own perspectives. As such, there is a lot of remarkable difference between their expectations and demands. Coming to age and life cycle, the consumer's wants and capacities change with age. The family life cycle exercises a definite influence on consumer behavior with reference to products like durables and even non durables for that matter. Income segmentation is another long standing practice where it is dependent based on the type of investment that is likely to be made, whether it is a large investment or a small investment. Religion, race, and culture also play equally their important roles in this particular case. The third category of segmentation under this approach is the psychographic segmentation, where buyers are divided into different groups based on social class, their lifestyle, and personality characteristics. The social classes are relatively permanent homogeneous divisions in the society, wherein this particular social class indicates similar lifestyles, values, interests, and behavior. The lifestyle concept also is considered as another important aspect determining buyer behavior, where in this case it reflects the overall manners in which the persons live and spend their time and money. It is a behavioral concept which enables to grasp and predict buyer behavior. Lifestyle concept as a basis of segmentation is reasonable and desirable, but this concept has little operating utility. Personality, on the other hand, is the individual's consistent reactions to the world about him. Personality tests attempt to measure such characteristics as dominance, aggressiveness, objectivity, achievement, etc., which influence buyers' behavior. Now, the second type of approach is a product oriented approach, which is based on the use pattern, the benefit pattern, and brand loyalty. Considering the use pattern, it circles around as to how heavy, medium, light are the products being utilized. The use of the total consumption of a family for a given product may act as a basis for segmentation. A buyer can be classified based on these types as to heavy, medium, light users and non-users. The usage pattern of heavy users like age, income, family level, etc. should be combined with promotional devices in order to achieve a good marketing success. Now, the benefit pattern is on the basis of wants and desires of consumers. It is sought on the basis of performance, style, and durability. The brand or the store loyalty is one which reflects on the customer loyalty, wherein it enables a marketer to tailor the promotional content and product appeal to retain customer loyalty, to attract customers from rival brands, and to convert non-loyal to loyal buyers. Now, there is a different criteria of segmentation for industrial markets, wherein industrial markets circle around demographic factors, operating factors, purchasing approach factors, situational factors, and personal characteristics. The type of industries which relate themselves to demographic factors depends upon the products that are being sold, the size of the companies, the geographical area, and the one that requires the best attention is what will be circled around these demographic factors. Operating factors may be in the form of technology, user or non user status. The purchase approach factors is where the companies sometimes have a centralized purchase function or a totally decentralized purchase function. So, depending upon the purchasing policies, that is the power structure which will relate to maybe financial soundness, technological soundness, have an impact in market segmentation. The situational factors may require either sudden or an immediate delivery for products based on the need of the product or the need or the purpose of the product. They may serve based on either a single purpose or a multiple purpose, and this depends upon the size of the orders based on the requirements of the industrial units. The personal characteristics is where the industrial customer may either need an enterprising and a risk taking one or may be conservative and cautious. The industries might be loyal to a particular supplier. All these personal characteristics are noteworthy for segmentation of industrial markets. Again, marketing has a different category of segmentation, or the categorization is based on the type of market it is, wherein the options are either concentrated market, differentiated marketing, or undifferentiated marketing. Concentrated marketing is one where all the available resources are in one chosen segment within the total market. It selects a market area where there is strong competition and it is able to match its resources with customer demand. The differentiated marketing is where the firm enters many marketing segments. The firm also decides appropriate marketing mix for each segment. Such a marketing strategy offers higher sales and higher customer satisfaction. Undifferentiated marketing is where, if the marketer does not prefer the idea of market segmentation, he can follow undifferentiated marketing, where the marketer has a single marketing mix for several segments. The firm will face more specialized competition in each segment. Now let's discuss about what are the different steps in segmentation. The first step that is involved in segmentation is assessing different customer groups. The customers vary according to the nature, the type, and the preferences, and as a result of which it requires categorization of customer groups. The second one is matching the customers with different market segments, allocating each type of customer to the right type of segmentation that would be related. The third one is formulating different marketing strategies, where for each type of segmentation, the strategies adopted will have to show a variation so as to be compatible with the type of customer group. The fourth one is choosing the most profitable segment, the one that is most beneficial to the marketer. The next one is where you estimate the levels of purchase, how much the customers want to buy. They determine the quantum of purchase, and based on this, the segmentation will also have to be decided upon. And the last one is the alteration in the product offerings. It is best noticed that same products with same features cannot be marketed over a period of time because the customer's preferences and tastes show a variation very frequently. It is but necessary that the marketers show a variation in the products that they are offering to the customers. Now, so far we were discussing about the segmentation of markets based on different types or different categories of customers. Now, let us analyze each customer individually by analyzing the buyer behavioral pattern of the customers. Now, this refers to the buying behavior of the final consumers who buy goods for personal consumption. How do consumers respond to marketing efforts that the company might use? Now, this is where the study of buyer behavior comes in. What is buyer behavior? It is totally a psychological, social, and physical behavior of customers As they become aware, they evaluate and purchase and consume and tell others about the products and services. Buyer behavior involves both individual and group processes. It is reflected by post purchase evaluation, which indicates satisfaction or dissatisfaction. It is shaped by the social environment and it includes both consumer and industrial buyer behavior. A strong feeling, urge, instinct, desire, or emotion that makes the buyer to make the decision to buy is identified as buyer behavior. Human beings are motivated by their needs and wants. Talking in the context of buying motives, it can be categorized into two. One is product motives, and the second one is patronage motives. Product motives are again classified based on the nature of satisfaction, which evolve around emotional product motives and rational product motives. Emotional product motives are those impulses which persuade the consumers on the basis of his emotion, that is, pride, ego, and status. Rational product motives relate to persuasion on the basis of logical analysis and proper evaluation, where the cost benefit alternatives are being considered by the consumer. Coming to operational product motive, it is the ability of a product to function properly. And talking of socio-psychological product motives, it is the social significance that the buyer attaches to the product. Coming to patronage motives, it can be defined as the consideration or impulses which persuade the buyer to patronize specific shops. Here, again, it can be grouped into emotional patronage motives and rational patronage motives. Emotional patronage motives are those that persuade a customer to buy from specific shops. It can relate to his favorite shopping place. Rational patronage motives are those which arise while selecting a place depending on the buyer's satisfaction when it offers a wide selection, the latest models, and the after sales service. Now, let us see what are the factors that influence buyer behavior. Now, there are certain presumptions which underlie the buyer behavioral concept. Buyer behavior is an orderly process where the buyer interacts with his or her environment for making a purchase decision on products. There are internal and individual factors which can be psychological factors like motivation, perception, learning, attitudes, and personality, which reflect on the behavioral pattern. Socio-cultural factors like family group and reference group also influence buyer behavior. The environmental factors like economics, technology, law, and political factors do have their respective impacts. Buyer behavior is considered to be the cornerstone of marketing strategy. The firms must understand the buyer behavior to achieve the objectives of customer satisfaction. Buyer's mind is called the black box. Inputs are processed in his mind, and buyer's responses are the outputs through the influences from various factors. Now, if we consider the factors influencing buyer behavior, we can consider as product, price, place, and promotion. And inclusive of this, we have marketing and other stimuli. We have the economic factors, technological factors, political and cultural factors. Now, the decision making process, or rather, the buyer behavior is working out on the buyer's decision making process. So, what is he exactly trying to evaluate, or what is he exactly trying to decide what is to be bought? So, it depends upon what is the information that he receives about the product or the service. What you can call this as problem information, or in other words, the information that pertains to his decision making process. So, out of the information that is so collected, he will evaluate, the buyer will evaluate the pros and cons of the product and decide whether, or rather come to a conclusion as to whether to make a purchase or not. Now, this is where the black box comes in, and after this content formulation in his mind and his decision, he identifies whether to buy the product or not to buy the product. Now, apart from this, we have certain essential characteristics which affect the consumer's behavior in this particular process. So, if we talk of the buyer's response here, he has to identify in the context of the choice of the product, the choice of the brand, the choice of the dealer from whom he wants to make a purchase, and apart from that, how much time he would have to spend on making his purchase and what would be the amount that he would have to spend on making his purchase. So, when you speak of the subclassifications of those factors which influence the behavioral pattern of the buyer, we can categorize them as cultural factors, which reflects on the culture, the subculture, and the social class. Coming to the social factors, you have the reference groups, family, roles, and status. The personal factors will include age and life cycle, occupation, personality, and self concept. And the psychological factors revolve around motivation, perception, learning, relief, and attitudes. Speaking of the cultural factors, this relates to the most basic cause that the person's wants and behavioral pattern exists upon or rests upon. So it is based on the culture that the person is being brought in or he's being brought up, and based on which he decides what type of a response he need to give in for the products and services available in the market. And the other two factors which influence the cultural factors would be subculture and the social class. And in the context of subculture, it relates to the groups of people with shared similar value systems which is based on the common experiences of life. So this would relate to the national groups, religious groups, racial groups, and geographical groups. And as the subcultural factors denote, it works on those individual groups based on which the buyer decides his purchase pattern. Coming to the social class, it relates to the people within the social class who tend to exhibit similar buying behavior. So you have the upper class where they try to relate to a different purchase pattern wherein it is only the quality that matters to them and the product availability as long as the product is able to satisfy their individual needs. Coming to the middle class, it is a question of the cause and effect relationship, that if they want to buy a particular product, whether the product is worth that much of amount that they'll have to spend or whether the product is really essential for them. And coming to the lower class, they only identify those which are essential for them. And it needn't relate to the money factor as such, but it is only a categorization of those type of products and services which they want to identify as their day-to-day requirements. Speaking of the social factors, it can be categorized into the groups, the family, and the role and status. When you speak of groups here, it relates to membership. That is the particular class or the group where the buyer belongs to. And apart from that, he refers or he relates himself with the reference groups, which can be his own kith and kin, it can be the people where he's working with, or it can be other members who refer a particular product or service to him. So based on these different outlets, the impact that it would create, the purchase pattern of the buyer, is dependent on these different aspects. The influence of these reference groups has got a definite impact on the purchase pattern of this particular buyer. When you talk of the family here, it relates to the husband, the wife, kids. And the purchase pattern within a family is dependent upon the needs of these individual people or these individuals belonging to that particular family. And it can relate based on the person who is influencing the buyer to make the purchase, or it is the buyer himself who decides what to buy or how to buy and whether the product is essential for him or not, or even for the family for that matter, or otherwise the individual user, that is the ultimate user who ends up using that particular product. And when you speak of the roles here, the roles and status are those factors which influence the decision making process. So it relates to the activities of a person in a group. So when you speak of a woman, she plays the role of a mother, a sister, the daughter-in-law or the daughter, or however it is. This is from the family side. When it comes to the official side or in the work front, or when she's a career woman, she has to play the role of an employee. So it depends upon the association with which she works. The factors can have an influence on her behavioral pattern. Coming to personal factors, the personal factors which influence the behavioral pattern is that we have the age and the family life cycle stage, the economic situation, then you have the occupation and the personality and self concept. So, when you speak of personal influences, the age of an individual, the family to which she belongs to, and in what sort of a family the person is living in, either a nuclear family or a joint family, where the behavioral pattern will vary according to the type of the family structure, the economic situation, which relates itself to the financial viability of the individual, the occupation of the individual, which will definitely relate to the purchase pattern or the intentions or the decision making process, is very much dependent upon the occupation which the person is involved. And the personality as such, the individual as such, what are her factors or his factors based on which her behavioral pattern circles around. And when you speak of personality here, it is the psychological aspect of an individual, whether the person is consistent in the behavioral pattern or keeps changing responses according to the changing environment. So, a person will have to be considered as to maintaining his personality depending upon the type of circumstance or the environment he or she is in, and they decide the purchase pattern accordingly. And this is basically dependent upon the lifestyle indication, the activities with which a person is being involved, the interest and the opinions. Actually, in this particular perspective, we have the AIO theory, which works based on the activities, interests, and opinions of an individual behavior. So, this particular aspect actually circles around the theory which is called as the AIO theory, which is nothing but the activity, interest, and the opinion. That is, the desire of an individual to purchase a particular product or not is dependent upon these three different aspects. Coming to psychological factors, we can consider motivation, perception, learning, beliefs, and attitudes as those which influence the behavioral pattern of an individual. Motivation is a driving force which makes a person to act. It is the drive to act, to move, or to obtain a particular goal, or decide what is to be purchased or what is not to be purchased. So this again is backed relating itself for an individual's need to buy the product or not. When you speak of perception here, it is actually how the person is motivated, how the person actually decides based on that particular motivation. So it is an individual's perception of the situation. The individual's senses relate itself as to whether the purchase is intentional, is desirable, whether it is a need, whether it is a want, or it is a luxury. So depending on these aspects, the perception of an individual varies from person to person. And people are likely to emerge with the different perceptions relating to the same process. So this actually again relates itself to what is called as the three perceptual process, which is selective attention, selective distortion, and selective retention. When you speak of selective attention here, the person makes an exclusive view about the particular concept of whether to purchase a particular product or not. Selective distortion is whether the person or the individual drives away his thought to purchase the product. He doesn't have the intention because of certain factors which do not create that much of an impact on his behavior. The selective retention is one where the person retains his intention or his thought or his decision to buy the particular product or avail of a particular service. Coming to the learning aspect, learning describes changes in an individual's behavior arising out of a particular experience. Learning refers to changes in the behavior that is brought about by the actual practice or the experience the person undergoes. And when you speak of beliefs and attitudes here, a belief is just a descriptive thought that a person holds about something. It is an opinion or it is a viewpoint pertaining to something on which the person has already acquired a knowledge or an opinion, based on which he decides what his purchase decision need to be. An attitude is something that describes of a person's enduring favorable or unfavorable evaluation of feelings and emotions. And based on those favorable and unfavorable situations so created, he decides whether he's got the all the intention or his opinion to buy the product or not. This is where the brand loyalty also works here. That is, an attitude is one that creates the ultimate intention within the buyer, where it focuses on the loyalty towards a particular product or a brand. So, attitude actually interacts with perception, the thinking and the feeling, and reasons out based on what is to be bought or what is to be denied. Based on these different aspects, if we talk of the consumer's buying process, it involves certain essential stages, where the first one is need recognition. When you talk of need recognition here, it is the difference between the actual state and the desired state, where this is dependent upon two different emotions, where it is the internal stimuli and the external stimuli. So, internal stimuli is the real emotion that is felt in. That is, if a person wants to say, or he looks at a particular product, let's say it can be a Coke or a Pepsi or something like that, some sort of a soft drink. And the internal stimuli here is based on whether the person really has a need to drink that particular product or eat that particular product, in the sense whether he really needs to avail himself. This is dependent upon the hunger or the thirst that the person has. In other words, it relates to a person's normal needs. It relates to a person's normal needs. When you speak of the external stimuli, it would work around the TV advertising, the magazine ads, or the radio slogans, which will stimulate externally on the desired impact that a stimuli should create. The second step is information search, where the individual identifies the different categories of information about a particular product or a service dependent upon the different sources. And when it relates to the different sources, it can be the personal sources, which would relate to family, friends, neighbors, and out of this, the most influential source of information is the one which is a personal influence that is being created. When you speak of commercial sources, it relates itself to advertising, the sales promotion, and the like, where it is from this particular source that the individual derives most and the best of the information. And in the context of public sources, the mass media and the consumer rating groups, that relates to the reference groups, would be a better source of information in this particular perspective. The experiential sources are those which come based on the experience that an individual gains, that is based on handling the product or examining the product or by using the product itself. The third step or the third process is the evaluation of alternatives. When it comes to the decision making process, this is a prelude to it, wherein the individual or the buyer has various alternatives and he has to make the choice of the best alternative, and ultimately it is here after making that particular choice he arrives at the decisions that he is relating himself to, on the decisions that he is relating himself to. Now, when you speak of the evaluation of alternatives, it would relate to the product attributes, which can be based on the quality, the price of the product, and the features of the product. Then the level of importance that the buyer attaches to that particular product, whether the attributes of the particular product are something that relates to his personal need. And the third is the brand beliefs, where the buyer relates himself to a particular brand, where that particular brand is available or not. And then coming to the total product satisfaction, whether the buyer is totally satisfied about the product, in the sense whether the product possesses the required attributes which would satisfy the individual buyer's needs. And the evaluation procedure is where the product, in the process of choosing a product, it is dependent on not only one particular attribute but many other attributes. Say it can either relate to quality or price, or it can relate to brand or price, or it can relate to brand, product, quality, and price, and ultimately the worth of the particular product for the price that the buyer pays. The fourth step is the purchase decision, where it is relating to the purchase intention of the buyer to buy the most preferred brand, and it is dependent upon the influence that is created by others, or it is dependent upon the situational factors which drives the urge in the buyer to buy the particular product or not. The last step is the post purchase behavior, where after making the purchase, the buyer analyzes whether the product has performed according to his expectations, whether the product has all the essential features that would give him the best of the satisfaction. And this sort of a post purchase behavior can be arrived only on the after usage of the particular product. So this is where you can categorize a customer as a satisfied customer or as a dissatisfied customer. Consumer behavior is actually dependent upon the type of a decision that the consumer makes. So when you speak of the type of decision here, it can be based on the complex buying behavior, where the person or that is the individual is highly involved in a lot of shopping and has total awareness of the different brands of products, their prices, their availability, and the person is a rational consumer. And when you speak of the other behavioral pattern, it is a variety seeking behavior where the individual has no preferences for brands and is interested in all different products that come into the market, however new the product is introduced, and the different types of discounts that are being offered. So the decision making process is again extended to another type of behavioral pattern, which is called as the routine response behavior, where this is something where the consumer is a very, very brand loyal person, and he repeats the purchase of the same product. In other words, the purchase of these type of consumers are recurring in nature. They buy only the same brand of product. And next comes the habitual buying behavioral pattern, where the person does not possess any knowledge about the particular brand or the product. It is the on the spot decision that is being taken by the buyer depending upon the availability of the product and also rationalizing with the need for the particular product. Coming to the different theories of buyer behavior, the most important of all and the regular type of behavioral pattern or the theory of buyer behavior is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, where the focus is initially based on the physiological needs, which is the bottom part of the pyramid, and this relates to the natural needs that an individual has, where this can be like the hunger, thirst, the desire to possess some basic things that an individual would need, maybe a house, something of that sort which satisfies the basic needs of an individual. Next comes the safety needs, where this relates to the protection or the security that is desired by an individual, where he would want to actually protect himself and his family from not only from the regular security that is expected of, but otherwise too, where it can be also on the financial grounds. The third one is the social needs, where it relates to the sense of belongingness, the love that is expected of an individual to another individual. Next comes the esteem needs, where this is something about the social status, the self-esteem, that is a pride in possessing a particular product that the person has, and it is over a period of time that once his basic needs are all satisfied, this particular type of need comes into the individual or creates some sort of a drive in the individual. And lastly comes the self-actualization needs, where the person tries to identify himself or herself as an individual and requires recognition on all different perspectives, mostly from the society's viewpoint. Next comes the Marshallian model, which speaks of the economic theory. This is also called as the marginal utility theory. Now, the basic assumption underlying the marginal utility theory is that the buyers are rational. That is, they decide what is right or wrong for them, and based on that, they make their purchase. Then they evaluate the alternatives. Whatever are the possible alternatives that are available, they make the choice of the best alternative, and they also ensure that their needs are fulfilled to the maximum extent possible. But one thing that has to be considered in this particular model is that all needs are not fulfilled because of the less purchasing power. The very concept in this particular theory is that when you speak of the marginal utility theory, it is always striking a balance between the need and the purchase power. So, when the purchase power is less, automatically there are many needs that remain unfulfilled. And obviously enough, the purchase decisions are based on economic calculations, wherein it would definitely relate to the financial viability of the individual consumer, whether he can afford to buy the particular product or not. And the economic theory actually extends to creating different types of effect on the consumer, where if you talk of the price effect, it is a case where it relates to when the price is lower, definitely the demand for that particular product is high. When you talk of the income effect, when the purchasing power is on the high, the quantity that is demanded by the individual is also high. When you talk of the substitution effect, lesser the price of the substitute, lower is the demand for the original product. When you have a close substitute to a particular product which is available to an individual consumer at the least possible price, he would definitely go for that product which has got a lesser price than the one which is original in nature, or obviously enough, when it is original, it is always priced high. And lastly, coming to the communication effect, this relates itself to the promotional expenditure that is involved, where greater the promotional expenditure, higher is the sales. The more you try to educate about the particular product to the consumer, better is the response from the consumer, and this obviously hikes up the sales of that particular product. Next comes the Pavlovian model, which is also called as the learning theory. And the Pavlovian model circles around three different aspects. One is the drive, which is called as the strong stimulus that persuades the consumer to purchase a particular product. It is the drive within the consumer to buy a product. Second is the cues, which is identified as a weak stimuli that arises because of the marketing and social environment. And it determines when the buyer will respond. So, based on the environment that is created, the stimuli that is induced, or the impulse that is created, the buyer decides whether to purchase the product or not. The third comes the response, where it takes place through the trial and error method, where the person, say, makes a purchase for the first time, tries out that particular product, and then subsequently, when he wants to buy the similar product, then he comes to decide as to whether he should buy that product itself or go for a different substitute that is available. Probably this can be based on the output or the satisfaction the person has derived, or from the price perspective. It is the cue and the response that actually induces the consumer to make a repeat purchase of a particular product. So here, when you speak of the learning theory, that is, in other words, the Pavlovian model, it refers to the change in the behavioral pattern that is brought about in an individual because of the experience that he has gained. Everyone thinks that the influence or the impact that is created is learned, and the price, quality, service, or brand act as cues to influence consumers' response. Then advertising and sales promotion acts also serve as guides which persuade consumers to make the purchase. And lastly, the response of the individual to decide whether to make the purchase of the product or not. Coming to the next theory of buyer behavior, this is called as the psychoanalytical theory. This theory was started off or initiated by Freud, where the theory is based on the human personality and self image. The self image is a great motivating factor which induces the consumers to buy. In this theory, there are the human personality actually is divided into three different parts. The first one, which is called as the id, which is the called as the animal instinct within an individual. That is, it is a source where the energy within an individual drives the individual to make the purchase. The second is a superego, which is the conscious, where the internal representation of what is socially approved is being considered. The third is the ego, which is the mediator, where the person actually tries to find satisfaction in the purchase that the person has made, and whether it is a socially acceptable one or not is for him to decide. So the conscience is the one which directs the id impulses for finding the ultimate satisfaction on purchasing this particular product. An extension of the psychoanalytical theory is that there is a constant conflict between id and superego, and the superego actually stops the behavior from making his purchase. Ego by itself acts as a mediator and provides solutions on the basis of financial conditions. Next is the Harvard Street model, where it is based on certain assumptions here. It assumes that the problem solving approach in buying, it is introduced as a learning process in buying. And the third thing is it explains how consumers compare the available products to choose the best option. Satisfaction here is because of brand loyalty, and the dissatisfaction is because of brand switching. So the Harvard Street model shows the process and various factors that influence the buyer behavior before and during making a purchase. It emphasizes on three main attributes or three main variables, where the first one is a perception, the second is a learning, and third is attitude formation. So this explains how consumers compare the available products in order to choose the best that is available to them, and the choice of the product is based on the relevant information that is being collected. So when you speak of the relevant information that is collected, the source is important here. So it would relate to either the social source or the commercial sources. When you speak of the social source, it is the influence from the reference group, from the self, and also from family members. And commercial sources would be those that relate to the commercial environment, that is the advertisement and other sales promotion techniques that the companies put forward to create this sort of a stimuli within the buyer. There are certain predictions that can be made out of this particular model. That is, the predictions are the stimuli are perceived and learning occurs and results in output. The output occurs based on the perception and learning. That is, it would relate to the non-observing variables. And the third thing is exogenous or outside variables such as social class, financial status are used to predicting perception and learning. So when you go to a detailed analysis of the Harvard Street model, it actually breaks into different stages, where the first stage is that motives are based on certain needs which actually insist on satisfaction. So this leads to goal-directed behavioral satisfaction. So motives are those which ignite the need for the particular product. So when you speak of ignition here, it is related to what is called as the stimulate input variables. When you speak of stimuli, the inputs in this case are the product themselves, that is the availability of the product themselves. That is the distinctiveness, where it is based on the product quality, the price, the service, and availability, and the significance of the product is highlighted in this case. When you go to the next level in the stimulus display here, it is symbolic, wherein here again it symbolizes a status, it serves as a status symbol, and this again works on the same factors like quality, price, distinctiveness, service, and availability. And the stimulus again is related to the social influence that is created, which arises out of family, the reference groups, and the social class. The second stage is where it is a process of evaluation, where depending upon the information that is available from various sources, the choice of the product based on different brand choice considerations, the learning experience that is being gained determines whether the product is desired or not. So, based on these different aspects, the buyer determines whether the product is a needed one or that can be evaded for a temporary period of time. The third stage is where the choice criteria gives to what is called as predisposition, that is, a preference of one particular brand over another brand. There are certain hindrances which actually stop the performance of the behavioral process. It can probably be the inadequate supply of a particular brand. It can be the external variables like financial status, time pressure, and such other factors which can actually pose as a block in proceeding towards the purchase decision. Now, if these factors are not present, the preference results in an output like attention, comprehension, attitude, buying intentions, and preferably the actual purchase is being made. The fourth stage is what is called as a feedback stage, where the feedback of the purchase experience is sent to the buyer. It brings out the actual satisfaction, whether the actual satisfaction has been attained compared to the expected satisfaction, and it is this satisfaction which will lead to the repurchase of the product or repeated orders, which will again further down to what is called as brand loyalty. So buyer behavior is influenced based on the change as a result of what the learning process has actually undergone based on the experience and the information that has been gathered by the purchaser.